Hey everybody, it's the Professor, and once again, it's the one and only Blue Pill Professor, coming at you from the internet and talking to you about the things we really care about, namely, the nature of women, and what we are all going to do about it now that we have awoken from our long slumber.
Been dazed and confused for so long, it's not true. Wanted a woman, never bargained for you. Lots of people talking, few of them know. Soul of a woman was created below.
This week on the question of whether a woman's soul was indeed created below, we turn to the daily headlines in the words of the great Manospherian Dalrock, D-A-L-R-O-C-K, who blogs on Christian game in marriage and the problem of feminism's infiltration into our churches. And he presents a study which claims that, quote, 95% of women feel relief, not sad, after having abortions. And he writes, the argument that abortion is a problem because it makes women sad is foolish. What we should instead be pointing out is that our embrace of abortion has turned our women into monsters that are more concerned with the feelings of the adult who decides to do the killing and selling of body parts than the unborn child being killed and sold off for those parts. And to drive the point home that a woman's soul really was created below, he provides a link to a female author who provides a, quote, unfavorable comparison of an unborn child to tooth decay. And I clicked on this article, and let me read you just one paragraph. Given the choice between living my life how I please and having my body within my control, and the fate of a lentil-sized, brainless embryo that has half a chance of dying on its own anyway, I choose me. Here's an uncomfortable fact for anti-choicers. Just because a woman doesn't want children doesn't mean she wants them right now. Maybe she's still got some fun to do. Or maybe she has a couple already and well-educated about the smelly neediness of babies and feels done about it. Either way, what she wants trumps the non-existent desires of a mindless pre-person that is so small it can be removed in 2 minutes during an outpatient procedure. Your cavities fight harder to stay in place. And that, folks, is what passes for journalism today. And I therefore offer up roughly 50 million reasons and 50 million little tiny pieces of evidence that indeed a woman's soul was created below. Last week we began a discussion of the captain first officer model of relationships, and this week we will expand on that model and attack it from a little bit different direction. We've learned a number of concepts in this series, like frame, maintaining the image of you at your best. We've talked about seduction and attraction triggers. We've talked about the motivations of women. And we spent some time comparing the captain first officer relationship model with the relationship between Captain Picard and his first officer. And today I'm going to talk to you about a little bit different slant on the captain first officer model. Because many of you guys, maybe most of you, have not been the captain. I mean, if you were, you probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast. So if you haven't been the captain, what have you been? In many cases, again, probably in most cases, you have been the drunk captain. Again, imagine the drunk pirate captain who spends his time in his quarters, sipping grog, while his first mate does all the work of running the ship. So while almost all men need to step up, they need to develop more alpha traits, take charge, and adopt a captain-first officer relationship. There is the subset of the drunk captain who's been hiding in his ready room for years, dumping negative shit on his first officer, modeling and permitting disrespectful conversations, and displaying the whole array of beta behaviors. But in short, refusing to man up and take charge. So I want to talk directly to you drunk captains, because I know what you're going through. I came staggering out of my ready room when the scales fell off my eyes after I discovered Athol Kay's book, Married Man's Sex Life Primer. And I realized that I was not only not the captain, I was the drunk captain. I was whiny, complaining, cringing, negative, and weak. And I'm not going to recapitulate it, but it was all a result of some really, really bad shit that happened in our lives. So you drunk captains out there, I understand. I understand that you're pissed because your wife doesn't respect you. I understand she only gives up sex grudgingly, probably, in most cases, a passionless pity fuck every month, mixed with a tiny trace of passion for the mid-month ovulation fuck. And that's it, twice a month. What happened to your life? You're pissed because you think she changed. Well, let me tell you guys, think again. Not only is the passion gone, but so is the love and desire. Your relationship has been on autopilot for many years now. And when you step back and when you really think about it, chances are your wife has every reason in the world to be pissed. Your wife has every reason in the world to not be fucking you. So let's work on changing that right now. What do you do when you realize that you are the drunk captain? What do you do when you realize your wife has not been following you? Well, because you have not been leading. I understand your drug may not be alcohol, but believe me, the drunk captain doesn't need a drug to screw up his ship. Perhaps you're so head over heels in love with your wife that she's repelled by you. And that's a drug. Perhaps, like in my case, some bad shit went down. And months or years later, you're still depressed and treating your first officer like shit. And believe me, I get that it doesn't help that she stopped fucking you. But that can be changed once you finally just get it and understand what is happening. A woman takes the shape of her container. You see, all that lack of sex is not even her fault. Let me repeat that. That lack of sex is not your wife's fault. It's yours. You were the drunk captain. You were not being attractive. Maybe your attitude changed from that fun, upbeat guy that you were the day before the wedding to the grumpy asshole you are today. Maybe you're relying on your first officer for emotional validation. Or perhaps you really do have a drinking problem and you need to cut back on the alcohol. Maybe you need to cut back on the weed. You're fat. You're pathetic. You're out of shape. Guess what? All of these can be fixed in just a few weeks. So if you are the drunk captain, I present to you a 12-step plan of recovery. I should point out, this is one of the very first thing I ever posted on the Manosphere. And out of it later arose my 12-step plan of dread, which greatly expands and modifies these 12 quick concepts I'm about to read to you. So consider this, shall we say, the beta attempt at a 12-step plan, which I hope helps some men out there who are drunk captains to recover. And I also hope that it helps some men who aren't the drunk captain, or maybe they were just not a good enough captain. And if you can take even one of these steps, do it and improve your marriage. Step 1 for the drunk captain is stop the sauce immediately. Stop it cold turkey. And I say you are still the drunk captain if you are giving negative energy to your partner, or when you draw energy from your partner. You are still the drunk captain when you complain, bitch, whine, criticize, nag, freak out, or lose your temper. Engage in unreasonable or passive-aggressive behaviors. Engage in covert contracts. Approach a problem from an emotional rather than a calm, cool, and logical perspective. And whenever you make people in your presence feel worse because you are there, just stop. Be a source of positive, affirming energy. And in order to do this is step number 2, build your frame. Work on it. Stop losing your shit. Be stoic. Be calm. Be rational. Be a man. Start taking charge by taking charge of your life first. Establish boundaries that are fair and reasonable and stick to them. Don't let her talk disrespectfully and don't model disrespectful behavior either. Number 3, beat the shit tests. And I've talked about that on a couple other podcasts. Number 4, show her that things are going to be different now. Look for duties that your wife has assumed that the drunk captain should have been doing all along and start to do them. Getting stuff done is alpha. Doing masculine stuff is usually better. But just get started today. Number 5, begin to assume your duties. Work smart. Pick tasks that the captain should perform or assist in performing and start with those. Start by framing it as you wanting to help your first officer. Not that you're trying to suddenly take over everything the day after you quit drinking. You need to sit down and learn from your first officer before you are ready to sit in the big chair again. And as far as timetable, look, if you've been depressed for 6 months, you've been derelict in your duty for 6 months, it's going to take at least 6 months of you doing your duties well before you fix the damage. Number 6, do not come to the bridge and start issuing orders like a wild man. Your wife has probably been forced to have sex with a man who has demonstrated he is inferior. She feels violated. She's pissed off. She's been pulling double duty for years. And you know what? She has every right to be angry. And if you suddenly go off, popping off, and yelling that you were in charge, I assure you, it is not going to go well for you. Number 7, start taking care of business. Go beyond taking care of yourself, building your frame, and assisting your first officer. Make a plan and execute it every day for the rest of your life. Improve a bit every day. Become proactive and start to take charge. Number 8, again, this is one of the first things I ever wrote on the manosphere. Number 8 is tell her once and only once what is happening, especially if she asks. Tell her the problem, your plan, and what you are going to do about it. And then shut up. This usually happens when your wife pins you down and says, "What is going on? What are you doing?" Well, that's a good thing, guys. You got her attention. Congratulations. Assure her that it is going to be better now. Don't argue. Don't get drawn into any maelstrom. Don't bring up the past. And don't ever let the past be brought up again. Number 9, if you fall off the wagon, and you will, get back on it as soon as possible and keep moving forward. Take the time to analyze what went wrong, but get on that wagon as soon as possible. Number 10, start to build your own life. Hey, I know you love your wife. Maybe you even worship her. Just don't. Cultivate a life apart from your wife. A woman wants to enter your world. Despite her tireless efforts, she really doesn't want to enter yours. Build up a fun, interesting, positive life apart from your wife. Then, eventually, you can give her the opportunity to enter that fun, exciting, happy life. You can lead her to the safe and happy place that you now occupy. And brothers, fake it until you make it. Number 11, again, one of the first things I ever wrote, talk to her about the captain first officer arrangement. This has actually been vetted several times, and nobody has really refuted me all that well. And I only advocate this lightly because most women seem to prefer it. They may not admit it right away, but they really do prefer this model because it takes the pressure off them. And if anything goes wrong, it's your fault. You know, the captain does go down with his ship. And believe me, your wife will be on one of the lifeboats while that ship goes down. And number 12, reward her when appropriate, punish her when appropriate by ignoring her. And again, this was the germ for my 12-step plan of dread, which I will talk about in a future tape, and which became the nucleus of my soon-to-be best-selling book, Saving a Low-Sex Marriage, A Man's Guide to Dread, Seduction, and the Long Game, and at least a chunk of the advice that we dispense on Married Red Pill. So next week, we will finally get to the concept of game, and we have already talked about your seductive frame. And next week, we're going to talk about your seductive game. And game and frame, of course, are not interchangeable concepts. The frame of marriage is the captain first officer model, however you conceptualize it, while the game of marriage is how you implement that. And in many ways, seduction game is overlapped by your seductive frame, because in fact, your seductive frame is your seduction game. But we will approach it from a little bit more generic perspective and look at what the pickup artists have to say about how to moisten the panties of women, and more particularly, how to moisten the panties of your wife. So thank you very much for listening. Like, share this video with whoever you think it might help. Subscribe to my podcast and video, subscribe to Married Red Pill, and start to comment and join the discussion. And of course, that music means my time is up. So as always, I leave you with the words and wisdom of Mr. Robert Plant and Led Zeppelin.
Turned away. But now's the time to look and look again at what you see. Is that the way it ought to stay?